What's up, YouTube? I haven't gotten to post a ton recently, but hopefully that'll be kicking back up a good bit. We had a really fun stream yesterday and played some Domain Zoo and some 5-color Atraxa Reanimator just to try out some different stuff. And so I figured I'd start getting those leagues posted on here as well. This one, obviously, as you can see by the title of the video, as well as what's on the screen, this Domain Zoo list brought to us by the Rat Zoo, featuring 4 copies of Orcish Bowmaster in the flex spots that you usually see devoted to like Preordain or Spell Pierce or Tarmogoyf, something like that. They opted to go with Bowmaster. Great answer for not only opposing Bowmasters, but random X1s. Good call against the ring decks running around. So I figured I'd see how it played out. I've liked Orcish Bowmaster a lot in like Jund Shadow, Grixis Shadow, stuff like that. So obviously getting to play it in other variations is nice. And me personally, having a very, very high distaste for the One Ring. If I can jam in a card that kind of makes that a little bit worse against me, then I'm pretty for it. So some of the other of note card choices about the list: running 3 copies of Nashoba Brawler, no copies of Tarmogoyf. So focusing a little bit more on like the value plan, a little less on the beat you down in the face plan. All the rest of a whole bunch of 4 ofs, 4 stub, 4 bolt, 4 rag, 4 wild Nikotl, 4 Kavu, 4 tribal flames, 4 bowmaster, 4 binding, 4 scion. So really, really consistent hits in the early game. You're almost always going to have like a 1-drop play into a good 2-drop beat stick, into interruption, interaction, some sort of follow-up thread on 3. So it's a very streamlined archetype. In the sideboard, 2 copies of Reprieve, 2 Chain to the Rocks, 2 Flusterstorm, 2 Terra Sunder, 2 Veil of Summer, 2 Natural State, 2 Zugu, and a Giganta as our companion. Whole mess of 2 ofs. The only thing that I would personally change, and this is just coming from like my previous zoo experience, is especially since you're not running Tarmogoyf, I'd probably go with 2 Rest in Peace over the 2 Reprieve, but we'll kind of see how it plays out. Obviously, if we run into a matchup or a bunch of matchups that we want Rest in Peace, and that could be better. But if we run into a bunch of like more fair stuff, then Reprieve could be the better option for the moment. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what happens. Grab me a swig of water. Anybody actually say swig? Is that a thing? I know it's a thing, it's a word, using it in context, but I'll be really interested to see what people think about the lines and the card choices. So let me know if you've checked out some of the videos before. I do have a few zoo videos posted. I'd probably say it's like one of my top 3 or 4 favorite archetypes in Modern. Mainly because you get to play Stubborn Denial. But so we had the option to lead on the turn 1 Nikotl or the turn 1 Ragavan, especially on the play in the blind. I really like leading on the Ragavan because the upside is so much higher. Like off the Sacred Foundry, if we hit with the Ragavan, we could get a fetched Zagoth Triome and play the Scion of Draco off a treasure token. In this case, we drew a Territorial Kavu, so we got to just play out the Wild Nikotl and the Kavu. Now, I know that I could have played the Scion pre-combat to give my Ragavan first strike, and I wrote it down as a punt in the stream. Ultimately, I'm not so sure, because if I had drawn into, say, a Leyline binding, I would have wanted to binding the Underworld Cookbook and hold up the stub instead of playing out the Draco. So, like, there was a number of things that I could hit that would make me rather hold on to the Draco to keep my mana available. And I ended up not hitting one of those, so it looks a lot worse than I think it realistically was. That being said, we did find a Tribal Flames. Looks like opponent's going all in on Asmo. Kill off our Scion, but we can shoot him in the face for a bunch. Pretty okay here. Also dashed the Ragavan. Could have get the idea. Sideboarding against the food decks. Ended up boarding out a bunch of Ragavans and some Wild Nikottles because I'm bringing in Idetsugus. Terra Sunders are coming in. Natural States are coming in. Ways to interact with cookbooks, sagas. I've been a big fan of Alpine Moon out of Zoo. I can understand some lists choosing not to play it and play a little more like all encompassing. But if you're expecting a bunch of Tron and a bunch of Saga decks, then Alpine Moon could be a very solid choice for you. I'll go ahead and make the foreshadowing comment now. The mana is pretty clean, surprisingly, for a 5-color domain deck. Having all the fetches and shocks allows you to get your colors pretty consistently. Okay, let's pause here because I do want to talk about this. Somebody in chat suggested like waiting till they activated Cookbook to bolt the manufacturer. And I think that is like the higher upside line. But one of the things I was really concerned about was my opponent having the card Unearth in their deck. And I really wanted to exile the manufacturer with the Kavu and just kind of like accept that they were going to get 3 tokens or 4 tokens right here. And then I would be able to exile the manufacturer after I killed it, play out another Kavu. That was kind of my thought process here. You could probably also make the argument of just ignoring and attacking in, playing another Kavu, holding up stub. But if they start making construct tokens, then that could be pretty bad for me. So I feel like I need to press the issue, try to get damage in if I can, and limit the manufacturer. So I was a little bit surprised when they didn't even chump block here. And then they didn't make a construct, so I really don't know what the thought was. It could be that they just wanted to not have something that like died to leyline binding. Then this was another weird turn. I could have held up Tribal Flames, or like I could have held up red. So if I drew another land, I could play Tribal Flames. But if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to guarantee holding up Stubborn Denial. And I'd rather guarantee the stub than have the chance at Tribal Flames. Because if my opponent, like, I guess if they had blocked all out, if they had blocked both guys on one of my Kavus, then they wouldn't have been dead to Tribal Flames anyway. So I could have played for the upside of them not blocking all out and held up the red. But if I didn't play out the Scion pre-combat, then my guys wouldn't have trample. So I had to play out the Scion to give them trample. If I played out the Scion, I was going to take myself off of either Tribal Flames or Stub. If I hit the Tribal Flames, I win. But I don't want to take off myself off of Stub if I don't hit the land for Tribal Flames. So I opted to go off the guaranteed information of I have Stub. I'm going to hold up Stub. Round 3, or round 2, up against Demonic Tutors. I meant to send him a message in chat and just be like, this is a really weird Yawgmoth deck. Turn 1, Fatal Push. Turn 2, Preordain. Go to exile the push. And he's got Snap Push to punish the heck out of that line. I was kind of thinking, oh, mURktide. I want to exile some instants and sorceries. Nope. Snapcaster into a double-sided Flame of Anor. If you don't know Flame of Anor, you can choose one between dealing, I think it's like 5 damage to a creature, or drawing 2 cards, or what's the last one, like destroy an artifact, something. If you have a control wizard, when you cast it, you can choose 2. So I could leyline binding the Snapcaster, but it would still let them use 2 modes on Flame of Anor, so it wouldn't actually stop anything. Counterspelling my mURktide, or counterspelling my Scion, really rough. I'm trying to save this Leyline Binding in case they have a mURktide or a Shieldred or a One Ring or something like that. And just kind of accept that I'm dead to Snapcaster in a few turns. It looks like it's just a Grixis kind of wizard control build, something like that. Little wizard sub theme. See the Bowmaster there at the end, so that makes me less excited about cards like Ragavan. So I do trim a couple Ragavans, a couple bolts, and I brought in. What did I bring in? Oh, Veil of Summers and Flusterstorms. Gonna help fight on the stack. That opening hand, I think, was one land. This hand, really, really risky. Like, it has to have the second land to get going. But I'm assuming with 3 really good, efficient beaters and double Veil of Summer plus a green source, like, I'm kind of willing to take the risk. Shieldred's Edict, my Nicodle on my upkeep. It might have a Bowmaster and they're just planning on, like, Shieldred's Edict thing because I can't Veil of Summer that. Archmage is charming my Nicodle, which is fine because I've got the Brawler and the Kavo, and then we find the third land, which is fantastic. So now I can have Veil of Summer up. Our little mulligan, not hitting anything relevant, is kind of getting a little better. Played out the Brawler pre-combat because they had the Shieldred's Edict in the yard. So if they snap Edict, I can sack the Brawler instead of the Kavo. Do end up having the Bolt to trade off. I get to Veil of Summer, a Flame of Anor, which feels super sick. Backup Flame, K. Backup Kavu, or backup Brawler. Hard to identify cards that are green versus green and red versus the other color option. So they go for a Bowmaster, attempt to double block to trade off with my Brawler. I'm going to try to Bowmaster their Bowmaster. And when they go for a Shark Typhoon, which was very unexpected, then the coast is clear. I get to kill off their Bowmasters, save my Brawler, deal 4 to them. Very good momentum swing for us. We still have this stub up plus the Veil of Summer. Bolt on the Brawler. Stub gets pierced, but they are down to no cards in hand. Now, I could go for the Tribal Flames now while they're tapped out, or not tapped out, but have no cards in hand, nothing to do. But I'd rather hold on to it in case they are running like Shieldred. And I'd want to be able to hang on to an answer for that. But obviously when they play out their land and I have a chance to Tribal Flames for lethal, I'm all for that. But I don't want to just throw out the Tribal Flames for no reason. All right, game 3. Very, very slow hand, but we can obviously protect this Scion very, very well. And they probably don't actually have that many answers to Scion. Like, I know they have Flame of Anor, I know they have Shieldred's Edict, but things like Fatal Push, Drown in the Lock, Lightning Bolt are all going to be dead against the Scion. So it does give a pretty good number of draws that don't actually accomplish anything. Colors, get our Scion down. Do have the counter spell, but we've got the Flusterstorm. Can't spell pierce our Flusterstorm either. I do have to be careful. If they attack in, I'm not blocking because I don't want my Scion to trade with like a Bowmaster or a token plus a Bolt. Counter spell. This will Stubborn Denial. It's a little bit worse if they have a spell pierce because then I have to waste a whole nother spell instead of just Flusterstorming it. but I kind of want to save my extra counters if I can, and Stubborn Denial has the highest upside of just one spell, deal with this thing. Whereas Flusterstorm is also very good in a counter war late. But opponent ends up looking like they don't have anything. I should have Flusterstormed that one, that Archmage's Charm. But I was really feeling like that Spell Pierce, and I kind of wanted them to like use it and just pay for it. But oh well, it was a weird. I should have Flusterstormed it. Round 3, it's like Tron, the Dismember. Now, I'm not an expert on Tron, but I feel like if you're in a situation where your opponent's got a Ragavan and you've got the potential of getting Tron online turn 3, I think you should just get Tron on. Maybe I'm wrong, but end up mapping for Beseiju to take out my Scion. So that to me leads me to believe that they've just got like nothing in hand. Go for the Bolt. Got a second copy of Dismember. I was not very well prepared for. Cycle the Triumph first in case I find a Tribal Flames. I could just like hit them with that right now. On for bridge. So our out is a Tribal Flames, and for them to not have a Warping Whale. Which I don't know if Tron decks are playing Warping Whale anymore or Spatial. Don't care about Spatial Control. Care about Warping Whale. Cityscape Leveler takes out my Scion, which is fine. I also could have found a Leyline Binding to take out the bridge in that one turn. But as you know, when you need to top deck something, here's Lane. I believe this turn, opponent has an Ulamog. The exile choices I was kind of surprised by. They end up taking out their own bridge and my Overgrown Tomb, which they could have just taken out my 2 red sources, and I actually wouldn't have had a way to cast Tribal Flames if I top decked it. But they didn't, so they left me with red, which of course means I draw the Tribal Flames. A lethal shot in there. But it might not be like an obvious choice when you're playing against Zoo. But it's Sacred Foundry Steam Vents. There's no Blood Crypt. There's no Stomping Ground. And then Savia Triome. I'd already cycled the Savia Triome. I had the Sacred Foundry and the Steam Vents both on the battlefield. So if they had exiled those 2, I would have had no red, no burn spells. Been unfortunate. Oh, opponent mold to 1 this game. I guess I should mention that part because it's kind of important. So I kind of figured they had like 1, maybe top deck a map or Star Sphere, whatever. They top deck a Dismember. So mold a 1 with a land and a Dismember. Second Tron land. It's second copy of Power Plant. Means I just get to like throw down the army. Say good luck. Next turn, tack in, have 8 points of burn wrapped up. On to round 4. 4 sounds right. Turn 1 to Coddle. Notably, we do not have black mana in this hand, so we can't cast Bowmaster, and 4 mana is the cheapest we can make Scion until we find a black source. So second Bowmaster is a pretty terrible draw for us. Then they do find Delirium off the Preordained, so I can't even like Bowmaster down the Channeler if I did find a black source, which naturally do. Have to play a Scion and pass. Really not getting too good of value out of our cards this game. Being behind on that black mana. Flash and Bowmaster in response to the bobble, but they do have a heat. They heated the Scion. Really, the army token doesn't matter too terribly much. Got the faster clock at the moment if they don't have anything going on, but with 4 cards in hand, iterating, I assume they've got something. Obviously, would have been super happy if they had cracked that bobble on their turn, but opponent wisely did not. Back in with both because I just want to trade off with this channeler, stop the clock as much as I can. And then I decided to divide up the damage between the channeler and them, mainly because if they played any draw spell, like a preordain, consider, whatever, then I could ping the channeler twice more for lethal off 1 draw. And then the other side of that was if they played a mURktide and took themselves off delirium, then the channeler would just die. And I didn't think at that moment that the 1 point of extra damage to them mattered, which looks like it didn't. Could have added Giganta to hand there, but if I played Leyline Binding and they had Spell Pierce, I wouldn't be able to pay for it unless I fetched off the Flooded Strand, which would put me down to 3 and dead to the Dragon's Rage Channeler. There's also a spot 2 turns ago where I could have Leyline Binding the Channeler, but I was more afraid of them just like untapping with a mURktide. I think I had Bowmaster, double Bowmaster, token, the Shoba Brawler at that moment, and opted to be kind of conservative. Sideboarding. Since I brought in the Hidetsugus, I cut most of the 1-drops. They also just died to Unholy Heat and Bolt pretty easily. And then shaved on the Shoba Brawlers, because again, they're a dead to Bolt guy. You don't want to play a Brawler on 2 and have your opponent on their turn 1 bolt it. And brought in like Hidetsugus, brought in Fluster Storms, and I think I ended up bringing in Reprieves game 3. I don't know if I brought them in game 2. Veil of Summers came in. I feel like if I can answer a mURktide. So the 3 goals for me in this matchup are answer a mURktide, land a threat, and don't lose to Blood Moon. And in no particular order, if you can focus on those, then you have a good chance. So you'll see me like not cracking this Windswept Heath because I don't know what I want to do for a basic yet. Like if they go for Blood Moon, if they went basic Island Blood Moon, I'm getting basic Plane so I can Leyline Binding it. But if I wait, maybe I draw some Kavus or something. And if they go Blood Moon, I would just want basic Forest to get down my Kavus. So it's a lot of I don't know yet. You can get a basic Forest and float all of your mana in response to a Blood Moon and Leyline Binding if you have 4 lands available. But if you have less than 4, then Blood Moon or Leyline Binding will see you have a basic Forest, a basic Mountain, reduce the cost by 2, and it's going to cost 4 mana. So don't think, oh, I have Domain. I can, like a Savai Triumph in a Breeding Pool, I can float white, let Blood Moon resolve, and then Leyline Binding. Like the reduction on Leyline Binding doesn't happen until after Blood Moon's resolved. So be careful of that. So I wanted to fire off the Bolt to see if I could coerce them into a counter spell if they had one. Same thing with this Kavu. I'm just like trying to bait a counter spell. They end up in my second main phase going for the dress down, so I have just like the clear Tribal Flames kill. I understand them going for the dress down in that situation if they didn't have a counterspell. If they have the counterspell, you got to sit on that. But if they don't have the counterspell, then might as well go for the dress down because things aren't getting better for you. And you play it during your second main phase, so when they untap, they have access to mURktide with all the counters or Channeler. They go on my instep, then mURktide enters with no counters, which probably is still worth it. Another basic hand. Get the reprieve, so we at least get a little bit of breathing room from the Blood Moon for a turn. Hoping to find something to get a basic forest. Not. If you notice the funny part going on with this hand, I have no red mana with a Bolt, Tribal Flames, Kavu, and a Chain to the Rocks that all want red. Or at least Chain to the Rocks wants a mountain. I could Chain to the Rocks with the Blood Moon out, but I thought it was pretty funny that their Blood Moon was giving me red. I had to fetch the basic planes off of the Windswept Heath to be able to binding, so I don't feel bad about that choice. But here, all I'm thinking is like, hey, any red source and the game's over. I could Tribal Flames a mURktide. I could Chain to the Rocks a mURktide. Unfortunately, like them leaving 3 spells in the hand or in the yard means they 100% have a second mURktide, which they did. I cannot Tribal Flames that one. So, a little bit of a variance loss there, never finding a red source. I could have gone for red off of that fetch land, but again, if I had, I wouldn't have been able to Leyline Binding the Blood Moon, so I had to get the white. Either way, on to round number 5 against our good buddy Mistaken. Which I did. I meant to type in the chat to Demonic Tutor's weird looking Yawgmoth deck. I did type in the chat to Mistaken, really weird looking Amulet Titan deck. The Power Plant Dismember. They're lining up for turn 4 Tron. We find a Lightning Bolt, so we'll lead with combat. They cracked the map, so I go ahead and show them the Lightning Bolt. If they hadn't have cracked the map, then I would have waited until their end step, because if they had had like a Warping Whale make a 1/1 block the Kavu, then I wouldn't have had lethal there. So I didn't want to just show them the Lightning Bolt and then attack while they had mana available. I think for me personally, one thing that I think I do really well is sequencing in non-guaranteed spots. And I feel like it looks like slow rolling a lot of the times, but I am one of those firm believers that there is 100% optimal sequencing and lines in situations like that. And you can say it's slow rolling all you want. I say it's giving yourself the biggest chance of not getting screwed out of a win. This was pretty funny. We got a Sundering Titan, or we were able to tear asunder a Sundering Titan. Classic. I don't really know why I shocked here. I think it didn't matter. I knew I wanted the Sacred Foundry to pump the Nicodles, but the shocking part didn't matter. But yeah, on to, this is game number 3 of round 5. Sideboarding against Tron. I think we already talked about it, bringing in like the Artifact and Enchantment, Hate, the Terra Sunders, and Natural States, and then boarding out. Well, or I think in this case, Bowmasters came out. Much like our last Tron opponent, Mistaken had to mull down pretty low to 4. So even though they have the Dismember for the Kavu, we do have backup threats. We're just hoping they don't have Tron online right away. Urza Saga probably means don't have Tron online right off the bat. But it does mean that they can get a map off of this crack the map off the Saga and like the power plant and have access to 5 mana next turn. 5 isn't a particularly scary number, so I probably should have just like bolted the Construct, played the Neshoba Brawler, and passed instead of holding up the Stubborn Denial here. I think I really needed to get the Neshoba Brawler on the battlefield. Now, it wouldn't have changed the clock with the Neshoba Brawler unless they didn't block, because they can always just chump block the Kavu. But actually, with the Tribal Flames, yeah, that actually would have been game right there if I had played the Neshoba Brawler the turn before, because I could have Leyline Binding the Construct, attacked in for 10, and Tribal Flames. So, yeah. Like, we ended up winning the game, but we did not play to our top decks, which was just a way to deal with the Construct. And realistically, we had Natural States, Leyline Bindings, Kavu could have looted for Asunder, land, whatever. So, a little bit suboptimal there. Overall, I think the league was really good, with the one loss being to the game 3 against mURktide, where we just didn't see a red source ever, which is a really weird thing to say, because essentially you have 4 Flooded Strand, Sacred Foundry, Savai, Steam Vents, 4 Windswept Heath, 4 Wooded Foothills, so 4, 8, 12, 15 red sources. And we did see one of the fetch lands, but again, had to get the, so it is what it is. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool league. I like the Bowmasters. I don't know if they have quite as much punch as you're used to at a zoo. I could see going down to 3 Bowmasters and going up to like the 4th Neshoba Brawler, which if you've watched any of the content from Black Belt MTG, he mentions that he's like in the 3 Bowmaster instead of the 4. So I could see that swap coming up pretty easily. Otherwise, yeah, I'll probably be playing some more Zoo pretty soon. I think it's a very fun deck, very powerful, very straightforward. And that's some of the things that I think are very, very good in Modern right now. Be proactive, close out the game, make sure your interaction is as versatile as you can. And Leyline Binding, Bowmaster, Stub are out some of the most versatile pieces of interaction you can get. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you think about checking out Zoo yourself. Otherwise, if you're sticking around, feel free to like the video. Jump over to the Control Freak Discord if you want to talk about Zoo or Shadow Archetypes, anything like that. Come check out a live stream. Hope to catch you there. Adios for now.